हाय एवरीवन, वेलकम टू सक्सेस ड्रीम पाथ। आज की क्लास में हम लोग कंप्यूटर का प्रैक्टिस 2500 क्वेश्चन आंसर का सीरीज स्टार्ट करने जा रहे हैं। आज की क्लास पार्ट 1 में कंप्यूटर बेसिक्स करेंगे। चलिए तो स्टार्ट करते हैं पार्ट 1। चैप्टर 1, कंप्यूटर बेसिक्स। What is the brain of computer? CPU. Which language does a computer understand? Binary language. What type of machine is a computer? Electronic. What is raw data called after processing information? What are raw facts called data? Which unit performs arithmetic operations? ALU. Which unit controls all operations? Control unit. What does CPU stands for? Central processing unit. What are physical parts of computer called hardware? What is a set of instruction called software? Which device is used to enter data? Keyboard. Which device displays output? Monitor. What type of memory is RAM? Volatile. What type of memory is ROM? Non-volatile. Which memory stores data temporarily? RAM. Which memory stores data permanently? ROM. What is the smallest unit of data? Bit. What is a group of 8 bit is called byte? Which computer is used at home? Personal computer. Which computer works on analog data? Analog computer. Which computer does both analog and digital data? Hybrid computer. Which generation used vacuum tube? First generation. Which generation used transistors? Second generation. Which generation used ICS? Third generation. Which generation uses microprocessor? Fourth generation. Which generation is based on AI? Fifth generation. What is the main circuit board called? Motherboard. Which device is used for pointing? Mouse. Which device prints output? Printer. Which device convert hard copy to soft copy? A scanner. What which storage device is magnetic? Hard disk. Which unit measures processor speeds? Hertz. What is the computer speed measured in hertz? Which software controls hardware? System software. What type of software is Windows system software? Which computer is most powerful? Supercomputer. Which computer is used in banks? Mainframe computer. What is the full form of PC? Personal computer. What type of computer is laptop? Portable. Which computer works automatically? Digital computer. Which unit stores instructions? Memory. What is the permanent storage called? Secondary storage. Which device shows visual output? Monitor. Which device produces sound output? Speaker. What is computer reliability called? Accuracy. What makes computer error free? Accuracy. Which features means working without stopping? Diligence. What is the ability to store large data called? Storage. Which feature means same result every time? Consistency. What is the limitation of computer? No intelligence. What is the speed of computer called? Processing speed. What enables a computer to work continuously? Diligence. What features of computer gives correct result? Accuracy. What is the capability to perform many tasks called versatility? What features storage? Huge data storage. What is computer reliability known as? Consistency? What is the main advantage of computer? Speed? What is the main limitation of computer? No intelligence. Which computer works on digital data? Digital computer. Which computer is used for scientific calculation? Supercomputer. Which computer supports multiple users? Mainframes. Which computer is smallest in size? Microcomputer. Which computer is also called PC? Microprocessor. What type of computer is desktop? Microcomputer. What type of computer is tablet? Portable computer. What type of computer is smartphone? Handheld computer. Which generation is called transition generation? Second generation. Which generation reduce size in and heat? Second generation. Which generation increase speed and reliability? Third generation. Which generation introduced personal computer? Fourth generation. Which generation uses VLSI technology? Fourth generation. Which generation focuses on AI and robotics? Fifth generation. What is the full form of VDU, Visual Display Unit? Which device display information visually monitored? Which device provides hard copy printer? Which device accepts sound input microphone? Which device records image input a scanner? Which device output sound a speaker? What is the function of CPU processing? Which unit stores instruction temporarily? RAM. Which unit stores instruction permanently? ROM. What is the smallest storage unit? WIT. Which unit equals 1024 bytes kilobyte? Which unit equals 1024 kb megabyte? Which unit equals 1024 MB gigabyte? Which unit equals 1024 GB terabyte? What type of device is keyboard input device? What type of device is monitor output device? Which software is essential to run a computer? Operating system. Which OS is open source? Linux. Which OS is developed by Microsoft Windows? What is the full form of OS operating system? Which process starts computer system booting? What type of memory is cache high speed memory? Which memory lies between CPU and ROM? Cache. Which storage device is optical? CD-ROM. Which storage device is portable? Pen drive. Which memory cannot be modified? ROM. What is computer automation called? Automation. What is ability to work without fatigue called? Diligence. What is the full form of ICT? Information and communication technology. What is the main function of computer? Data processing. What is the full form? GUI? Graphical user interface. Which interface uses icons and menus? GUI. Which interface uses commands? CLI. What is the full form of CLI? Command line interface. Which computer is used for weather forecasting? Supercomputer. Which computer is designed for a single user? Microcomputer. What is the full form of UPS? Uninterruptible, Uninterruptible power supply. What does UPS provide during power failure? Backup power. Which device protects computer from power fluctuation? UPS. What is the full form of OCR? Optical character recognition. Which device reads printed text into computer? OCR. What is the full form of OMR? Optical mark reader. Which device reads mark answers? OMR. What is the full form of MICR? Magnetic ink character recognition. Which device is used in banks for check processing? MICR. Which device records video input? Webcam. Which pointing device uses a light pen input device? Which device is used to draw directly on a screen? Light pen. Which device uses touch technology? Touch screen. What is the full form of LCD? Liquid crystal display. Which monitor consumes less power LCD? What is the full form of LED light emitting diode? Which display provides better picture quality LED? Which device is used for voice input microphone? Which device stores data on flash memory pen drive? What is the full form of HDD hard disk device? Which storage device uses magnetic disk hard disk? What is the full form of SSD solid state drive? Which storage device has no moving parts SSD? Which device measures data entry accuracy validation? What is the process of checking input data called validation? Which computer characteristics means error free output accuracy? Which input allows same input gives same output consistency? What is the ability to work for long hours called diligence? What is the full form of PDA personal digital assistance? Which computer fits in pocket size PDA? Which computer is designed for calculation only calculator? Which machines follow programmed instruction automatically computer? What is the full form of PCU? Power control unit. Which unit supplies power to motherboard SMPS? What is the full form of SMPS? Switched mode power supply. Which device converts AC to DC SMPS? Which components holds expansion cards motherboard? Which slot is used for RAM DIMM slot? Which device connect computer to power source power cable? Which computer feature means click response speed? Which computer works on a storage program concept digital computer? What is the full form of IBM International Business Machines? What does a computer mainly manipulate data? What converts data into information processing? Which part interrupts instruction control unit? What is the study of computer called computer science? Which features enables error-free calculation accuracy? Which features means high working rate speed? What is the ability to perform various tasks called versatility? What is the ability to remember information called memory? Which unit stores data and instructions? Memory unit. Which unit communicates with peripheral device input output unit? What is the full form of input out I I and O input output? Which device is also called video monitor? Which printer prints character by character dot matrix? Which printer uses laser technology laser printer? Which printer uses ink cartridges inkjet? Which output is printed on paper hard copy? Which output is displayed on a screen soft copy? Which device stores data on optical media CD and DVD? Which media uses laser beam for reading optical disc? What is the full form of DVD digital versatile disc? Which memory is used during processing RAM? Which memory contain boot program ROM? What is the initial program called bootstrapped? Which process loads OS into memory booting? Which storage is also called auxiliary memory, secondary memory? Which device is used for backup storage, external hard disk? Which memory has highest speed register? Which memory is directly accessed by CPU register? Which unit holds instruction currently executed RAM? What type of memory is cache volatile? Which memory reduces access time cache? Which computer works in real time system digital computer? Which computer is embedded in machines? Embedded computer. Which computer is used in washing machines? Embedded computer. Which features means automatic operation automation? Which features allow decision making by rules, logical ability? Which unit is responsible for decision making? ALU. Which computer characteristics means reliability, consistency? Which computer size category is largest supercomputer? Which computer category is smallest microcomputer? Which device provides tactile input touch screen? Which device captures handwritten input digitizer? What is the full form of CRT? Cathode ray tube. Which display technology is older? CRT. Which device controls cursor movement? Mouse. Which device is used for graphic unit? Joystick. Which unit checks correctness of instruction? Control unit. Which memory is non-volatile? ROM. Which component connects all hardware? Motherboard. Which system performs tasks without human intervention? Automated system. What is the science of automatic machine called cybernetics? Which computer features means high accuracy, precision? What is the capability of handling different tasks? Versatility. Which unit stores intermediate result RAM? Which unit directs data flow inside CPU? Control unit. Which memory is fastest after register cache? Which storage uses semiconductor chips? SSD. Which device is used to select command on screen? Mouse. Which key is used to enter commands? Enter. Which device produces graphical output? Monitor. What is the initial screen of computer called desktop? Which memory is used to store BIOS ROM? Which program checks hardware during a startup? Post. What is the full form of post? Power on self test. Which component holds CPU? Motherboard. Which port is used for keyboard? USB. Which port is used to connect monitor? HDMI. Which unit converts user input into machine language? CPU. Which computer characteristics flows dependability, reliability? Which features allow storage of instructions? Memory. Which device is used to record sound? Microphone. Which storage is used for long term data? Secondary storage. Which computer type is used in hospitals? Mini computer. Which device gifted which device gives printed text output? Printer. Which input device uses button and stick? Joystick. Which unit organizes processing steps? Control unit. Which memory is erased when power is off? RAM. Which memory retains data without power? ROM. Which device stores data magnetically? Hard disks. Which technology is used in touch screen? Touch technology. Which computer size fits on desktop? Which device reads barcodes? Barcode reader. Which input device is used in banks for cards? Card reader. Which computer operates on stored programs? Digital computer. Which unit performs logical comparisons? LU. Which units handle external devices? Input output unit. Which features means quick execution speed? Which memory is built inside CPU register? Which device converts digital signal to analog for display? Graphics card. Which which unit stores frequently used data? Cache. Which technology uses binary digits? Digital technology. Which computer type is designed for control system? Embedded computer. Which component provides clock pulse? System clock. Which unit synchronize operations? Control unit. Which memory is used for a startup instructions room? Which input device uses light to point light pen? Which output device gives audio result speaker? Which computer characteristics means trustworthiness, reliability? Which storage device is removable? Pen drive. Which system performs tasks automatically? Automated system. What is the main purpose of computer data processing? Which unit executes instructions? CPU. Which unit records? Which unit decodes instructions? Control unit. Which computer characteristics means accuracy of result? Accuracy. Which characteristics means working without tidiness, diligence? Which computer feature means flexibility of use, versatility? Versatility. Which computer feature means storing capacity, storage? Which unit provides temporary storage during processing, RAM? Which unit stores permanent instruction, ROM? Which unit performs arithmetic and logical operation, ALU? Which component coordinates all activities, control unit? Which device is used for visual communication, monitor? Which device is used to give instruction by clicking mouse? Which device is used for typing text, keyboard? Which device produces printed reports, printer? Which output is permanent on paper, hard copy? Which output is temporary on a screen, soft copy? Which storage device uses flash memory, pen drive? Which storage device has fastest access time, SSD? Which computer is designed for multiple users simultaneously, mainframe? Which computer is designed for a very complex calculation, supercomputer? Which computer is designed for general purpose task, microcomputer? Which device stores program and data together, memory? Which unit communicates with external environment, input output unit? Which component houses of the processor, motherboard? Which computer characteristics means dependability, reliability? Which computer characteristics means high speed execution, speed? Which computer characteristics means same output for same input, consistency? Which unit provides timing signal, system clock? Which technology enables user friendly interaction, GUI? Which technology uses command based instruction, CLI? Which device is used to read barcodes, barcode reader? Which device is used for biometric input, fingerprint scanner? Which computer is embedded in automobiles, embedded computer? Which computer supplies power to all parts, SMPS? Which unit checks system health at a startup post? Which memory holds BIOS, ROM? Which process holds operating system into memory, booting? Which storage is called mass storage, secondary storage? Which unit handle data input and input output unit? Which computer feature means automatic operations, automation? Which computer characteristics means logical thinking, logical ability? Which unit performs decision making, LU? Which device is used to draw graphics directly, digitizer? Which device provides pointing and selection, mouse? Which component store frequently assess instruction, cache? Which computer limitation means lack of emotion, no emotion? Which computer limitation means lack of intelligence, no intelligence? Which machine works only on given instruction, computer? Which concept state that program and data are stored together, stored program concept? Thank you for watching. Like, share, subscribe.